really exciting abstracts presented here for psoriatic arthritis and spondyloarthritis as a whole. So I think the first one I'd pick out was a study looking at the early treatment of spondyloarthritis with anti-TNF therapy. And they found that if you treat people with anti-TNF, a high proportion went into complete remission, and then they were able to stop the therapy in everybody who was in sustained remission, and about half of them sustained remission without any ongoing drug therapy. So that gives us a really good incentive for treating people early and trying to improve their long-term outcome. Another study that I think was really important came from the UK. It looked at an audit of inflammatory arthritis in the UK. And they found that patients presenting with psoriatic arthritis initially presented with much milder disease. They had fewer disease joints involved in their arthritis and better patient-reported outcomes. They then got less aggressive treatment than the rheumatoid arthritis patients. They had less drug therapies given to them. And then 3 months later, they had a worse outcome. So I think it really highlights the need to treat psoriatic arthritis patients and treat them relatively aggressively early on, again, to improve their long-term outcome. And I think the third study I'd pick out is a study from France, which looked in axial spondyloarthritis, and it looked at work instability. And they found that a work instability questionnaire called the AS-WIS, when used in patients who were doing quite well, who were on therapy and whose disease was relatively well controlled, was very good at picking up work loss and patients having to either quit their job altogether or being on long-term sick 2 years down the line. And 50% of them had a major impact on their work life 2 years down the line, despite the fact that their disease was relatively well controlled. So that suggests that there's something more that we're not measuring and maybe missing in clinic, and it may be an argument to use this screening questionnaire, the AS-WIS, to try and identify those patients early and intervene to help keep them in work and control their disease. So I think the big message really for spondyloarthritis has been to treat more aggressively and to consider how we treat people better. We have a number of drugs available to us. Most of them at this conference weren't brand new molecules, but I think the way we're treating people, the message for the need to intervene early, to make sure we're assessing disease properly and ensuring that we get the best outcome for patients. So I think this has been a really interesting congress for a number of abstracts that have been presented. There've probably been less new drug trials presented at this meeting, so we've not had the new molecules that we see sometimes, and obviously those come in fits and starts. But I think there's been a lot of new studies looking at how we treat people, some interesting basic science, which raises new possibilities for the future. And I think bringing that together has made for a really interesting congress. So tomorrow, on the final day of the congress, there's a poster presentation from a group in Amsterdam in the Netherlands, and they looked at real-life patients in a clinical cohort whose disease was felt to be well controlled by the doctor and the patient. And then they measured a number of different outcome measures to see if they really were meeting the targets that we consider. And then they compared those targets to try and see what the best target would be. So I think this is a really useful study to look at how we treat people in clinical practice and comparing different outcome measures to try and find the optimal one for use in practice that will really make a difference to patients.